all of you watching today, I'm sure, know Stephen A. Smith, Chris Mad Dog Russo, Molly Karam, all those great ESPN personalities. Now, you know the one who makes them the stars behind the scene on First Take? It is their producers. And today, here in another edition of Inside ESPN Productions, here on Chasey Sports News, we're joined by an associate producer at ESPN, Tatiyana Smallwood. Tatiyana, thanks for joining me. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Chase. I'm really looking forward to it. When I first met you, I was already just amazed. So I'm so happy to just be a sounding board and also just help you with any questions you have.
I'm so glad you're here today. Let's talk about that for a second. It was great meeting you at Fanatics Fest. I know you do some stuff separate from ESPN there as well. What an event that was. I mean, unbelievable at the Javits Center.
My goodness, I think I lost my voice after day two. Just the amount of fun and the people that you're meeting. It's just so good to be in a space where you have a ton of sports fans and that are there, dedicated, driving from Connecticut, driving from DC. I met people from all over that all just love football, basketball, and you name it. We had all types of sports there. So it was a great event.
It definitely was, and it is kind of fascinating. I'm shocked this didn't happen before. This is what the second year it is. I mean, of course they'll keep doing this. I'm shocked they never had something like this before because it's such a money grab in the best way possible. I mean, a lot of people love it. A lot of people love sports. So yeah, it was definitely an incredible event. How about Kevin Durant getting traded while on stage? I mean, I
Oh my
wasn't there the next day,
goodness.
but like, goodness gracious.
That was insane as well. And then Taylor Rooks is, being the person there, like how fitting as well. I'm a big Taylor Rooks fan. So I think that's one of those things we're in the right place, right time, and the world gets to see it.
Yeah, and I love that like the whole world of sports, the biggest athletes, the biggest announcers, they were all right there in one place, including Chase Coburn and Tatiyana Smallwood, for those who did not know. So it was great to be there. What an event it was. Now, immediately my mind just goes to your banner image on LinkedIn, which is Stephen A. Smith, Molly Karam, Chris Mad Dog Russo, and Tatiyana Smallwood. Before we break down what it's like working with them, explain to the audience a little bit about what you do at ESPN and First Take.
Yes, so I'm an associate producer for ESPN. I've been with the company for 5.5 years now. Wow, I'm definitely showing my age, a bit surprised. But it's been a good 5.5 years. I've dabbled everywhere between First Take, Get Up, Sports Center, the fantasy show with Matthew Berry, Daily Wager, ESPN FC, which was our soccer show. So I pretty much have been able to enter a lot of different studio spaces, work with a lot of different talent. But First Take became my main gig in 2022 when I moved from Bristol, Connecticut, which is where our main campus is, our headquarters, and moved to Seaport, which is no longer here with us. And now we're at Hudson. So I've seen a lot of different transitions and I've kind of just been growing with the company, which is a great feeling, especially as someone who's always wanted to work in sports, as someone who's always watched ESPN growing up, getting ready for school in the morning. I'm watching Stuart Scott and I'm watching Hannah Storm. So to be able to call them coworkers and really like dedicate my life to sports and this business, it feels really good to now at the almost age of 30 see it really paying off and feel like I'm entering my prime.
No, I mean it's unbelievable. I can obviously relate to that grind, waking up early, but needing to make sure you see Sports Center and the updates the night before. Obviously, things have changed with social media, but there's nothing like ESPN. I mean, it's the king of the sports media world. And I know a lot of the people we have worked on the show. I mean, we've had Mike Greenberg on this show, we've had Adam Schefter, a few big ESPN people on. So it's great to have you on as well today, just to speak about some of the things that happen at ESPN. Let's go to First Take for a minute. It's the biggest show on the biggest network in sports. You've been working on it now for a little while, as you mentioned. Obviously you go to the Stephen A's, the Molly's, the Mad Dogs. What is the experience like to work alongside some great professionals and personalities at ESPN, including them?
It's awesome. And I feel like I get a different, unique perspective from a lot of my other peers that work with me because of the fact that I am one of the two producers that actually work on site in New York with our talent. A lot of our producers and a lot of our staff are stationed in Bristol. So, what many people don't realize is that the show is primarily produced and supported from Bristol. However, our site location for where we actually shoot is New York. So, when people are asking me, like, oh, well, how do you produce the show, but you don't live in Bristol? And I'm like, well, I did live in Bristol. I'm very familiar with that area.
Right.
However, they needed someone to be here to support talent and to be able to support our guests whenever they come to the show. Most recently, we had Marcus Freeman come on the show. Today, we had Chad Ochocinco. So my job as a producer that's here in New York is to prep them, to talk to them, let them know, hey, these are your hit times. This is what we're going to be talking about. Is there any questions that you'd want us to avoid, you want us to stay away from? Also, just making sure that they're prepared. Are there any notes that you need before you come on air? Being that person that's the liaison between Bristol producers and staff and being there for talent that's here, it's a huge, huge responsibility because a lot of things can get lost in communication. So I always have to have a clear line of communication between what's going on in
Right.
Bristol and here. And then also sometimes when things go down, it's TV. So sometimes you lose connection, and to have to be that person that they rely on, where it's like, okay, if they can't get a hold of Molly, I'm right around the corner. I'm outside the door of the studio, ready to jump in and give her traffic and to make sure that she knows where she's going as well. So it's an adjustment. I do have to, working with Stephen A, I have to make sure that my fits and my outfits are always clean and pressed, which is
Hear it
something.
all the time with him and Molly on TV. You see the riffraff all the time.
Damian Woody, he'll get on anybody. He doesn't care. So, which is nice because you get to see that personality. Like you realize that his personality is consistent with TV. So he's not just saying, he's not just being the fashionista he thinks he is on camera. He's being that person in real life as well. So
Right.
that's a really big. Some of the small things that my coworkers in Bristol don't necessarily experience that I have to take on every day working here in New York.
Well, obviously, I'm sure it is a lot of fun. I know you guys just recently opened the new studio for First Take, and that
Hmm.
was something that we spoke about actually because I saw you just a few days before at Fanatics
Yeah.
Fest. Can you just talk about maybe the transition? I know you just touched on it a little bit, opening to a new
Yeah.
studio.
Yeah. It's been, what I can tell you, what it most feels like is going to a brand new school where you don't know anybody except for just like a few of your friends. It's like when your school gets rezoned and all of a sudden you're in the nicer neighborhood and you're like, okay, looking around and you're like, wow, I don't know 80% of the people who work here. So it has been a bit of adjustment because Seaport was such a close knit family, and a lot of the people that worked there were third party hires, freelancers. So a lot of them didn't get to move over to Hudson with us. So personally, for me, as I cherish relationships and making sure I have a good networking sphere around me, to have to lose people who you then considered family at one point, that was the hardest part of it all. And now I'm in a new building where it's like the networking opportunities are so vast. We're with ABC, we're with the Hulu, Disney people. Like it's just a whole new world. It feels like, and it's really cool because I'm getting coffee in the morning and I see Whoopi Goldberg walking right next to me, and she's like, "Hey, good morning," and I'm like, hey, good morning, Whoopi Goldberg is my coworker now. Like it's a different sense of
Right.
starstruck that I never had before because I'm just so used to already working with athletes. But yeah, seeing Whoopi Goldberg, that definitely threw me for a loop within my first 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I can kind of. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people could relate to the whole new school thing. Absolutely, but again, just having, I think those few people, I'm sure, really helped. You mentioned how you work a lot with the talent, right there in the studio. I want to focus on Stephen A. for a minute. I read his
Mhm.
book a little while
Nice.
ago. I love his story, his journey, kind of his path to where he is now. Everyone thinks of him as this sports debater and the sports commentator, as he is, and he's great at what he does. But what do you know about Stephen A. personally, or just working with him, that you believe makes him such a joy to work with?
I think what people don't realize is, and I think he doesn't want people to realize, is how soft of a heart he actually has. And I say that like Stephen A, I've known him for 3 years now. And he's met my mom, he's met my aunt, he's met my little brother, he's met my dad. He has introduced me to his family as well. So it's like you get to see a different side of him that many people don't see, because they just see the sports analyst. They just see
Right.
the commentator, the glitz and the glamour, and he's not afraid to tell it like it is, and he's not going to hold back. But they don't see that side of him where he is a father, where he is a protector, where he is going to make sure that no matter what, his people are good. Like, there's never been a time where I've asked Stephen A for something, or I've seen someone else ask him for something and he hasn't been able to deliver. And I just feel like he is a very, very selfless person, which a lot of people don't see because they just,
Right.
see the clips on the internet and whatnot. But I think from Straight Shooter, as you mentioned, you read his book, like you got to see a little bit more of the insight on how he grew up,
Right.
and him growing up with all sisters, and his brother that passed away, and his how his mom was a huge part of his life. And even now, like, I think that's still a sensitive subject for him too. So I think just seeing the more personal side of him makes me personally appreciate who he is and what he's
Right.
done for our business as a whole.
Yeah, I remember reading the book, and just even when you just mentioned a few of those things, a lot just came back to me from reading it. And I mean, having like some of his family members essentially tell him like, "You're going nowhere. You're never going to make
Mhm.
it." Like, I can't even imagine. I think maybe he brings a sense of hunger as well to get to the point where he is. And it's unbelievable to hear that. Obviously, he's such a great person to work with, and obviously, I'm sure many people like myself enjoy watching him every single day on First Take, including some of the people who help him behind the scenes as well. Kind of transitioning for a minute, what made you so invested in the idea of sports media to begin with?
That's a great question. So even as a young girl, like, I loved watching sports. My first love was baseball. Growing up in New York, a big Yankees fan. So back then, oh no, you're covering your face, Chase. What did I say?
Yankees, Yankees, Yankees. No, it's all right. My grandpa's a Yankee fan, but my dad grew up in the Baltimore area, so I'm a diehard Orioles fan. But it is
Orioles
much better to be
fan.
a Yankee fan right now. So enjoy wins. I'm not very familiar with them, so please enjoy them.
Well, we'll see how the rest of the season goes, because every year they definitely give me a little bit of a heartache. So
Uh,
but growing up, I used to watch Kimberly Jones, who was a reporter for the Yankees, and she also worked with the Jets as well. I grew up watching her on the sidelines. Grew up watching Jorge Posada, Derek Jeter, Mike Mussina, like all these people who inspired me to be a better athlete, because I also love playing softball. So as I'm watching them and I'm developing a love for the game, and I'm watching the reporters, ask them about the game-winning hit, and I'm seeing the Gatorade being poured on, I'm watching this as an 8-year-old girl, and I'm saying, this is where I want to be. Like,
right,
this is where I want to be every day if I'm gonna work. Because let's be honest, no one sits here and they dream of working. Okay, we work because because we have to make
right,
a living and support ourselves. But I always told myself, if I'm going to do a job, I want to make sure I'm doing a job that I love, that I'm passionate about, that when I wake up every morning, I feel like I have purpose. And I stuck with it. Obviously, you know what it takes when you sacrifice some of your personal time to get better at your craft. So when I was younger, I was in the yearbook. I was doing literary magazines in middle school. I was the sports reporter going to softball practice. After I got off softball practice, I would go straight to the basketball game. I'm interviewing the athletes at the basketball game. I'm also writing the stories the next morning. It was a lot of work that I didn't realize at that time that I really was building my foundation. And now when I look back and I'm essentially in my prime of being at the biggest network and the biggest show in sports, I look back at all the little things that I did, all the sacrifices I made, even in college, having to sacrifice your Saturdays, because Saturdays meant getting
right.
ready to go to UCF games and working 8 to 10 hours versus tailgating with my friends. So those are all sacrifices that I knew that if I was going to be serious in this business, and this was something that I saw myself doing as a young girl, I knew that I would have to make, but I was okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have that drive for sure. I mean, you mentioned have wanting to love what you do. I mean, Max Kellerman said in his farewell to First Take, "If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life." And he says he feels like
Yeah.
he never works because he talks about sports. He said it's what he do in his free time anyway. So why not
Yeah.
at least do it here? And I think this whole world of sports media, I can kind of relate to that passion. I mean, I've loved sports for pretty much my entire life, but I remember just a point kind of around the COVID time where all of a sudden I would go to a sports game and I'm like, all right, I want to be like on the court here. I want to be like kind of a part of this in a sense. And my athletic ability did not unfortunately allow me to do that. Thanks, mom, thanks, dad. But there's another element that you can get in, and that is sports media. And I think that's such a great side of it. You mentioned obviously you're here at ESPN. I had Tina Cervasio of Fox 5 New York on recently, and one of the
Nice.
things that she was mentioning, we had a whole discussion about it, was kind of women in sports broadcasting and in sports media in general. And 25 years ago, when she was entering this industry, it was not as easy to get a job as a woman in the sports media industry. Now it feels like you're in a time, how where you're getting a job where now all of a sudden, again, or finally, women are welcomed in the sports media industry as they should be. How great has that been for you to see?
Yeah, oh my God, I'm so happy you mentioned that because I feel like uh it is definitely progressing, and it's progressing in a way where it's not performative. It's authentic. And there are more and more women who really do want to get into the sport and that do enjoy it. And maybe they haven't seen women that look like them do it previously, which might have scared them away before. But I always say, like, being the only Black woman producer on our show, and most times in many spaces that I am working, I do have this sense of responsibility where I know that, like, okay, one day there will be girls who see what I do that look like me and know that they can do it. Growing up, I didn't have too many Black women producers that I could call up and lean on and ask questions
Right.
to and say, hey, just want to run this by you, or I just need to talk to someone who will understand, because maybe it's a day where we're talking about Angel Reese and someone says something that's a little off-putting, and you're like, wait a minute, that rubbed me the wrong way as a woman, or it rubbed me the wrong way as a Black woman. To have other people that you can lean on and say, am I crazy for thinking this, or just vent to? I think I didn't have that when I was coming up in my industry. So as a fifth year person at ESPN, I'm now being able to mentor younger women who are coming or still in college, that have my number, that they can text me whenever they need me.
Right.
They see me firsthand producing in the chair. They see me firsthand being on First Take and interacting with Stephen A and all that. So it's like you have a responsibility, and I think that we're going to grow to a point where it's not going to feel like it's not the norm, and I
Right.
know this will always be a male dominated space because it is sports. But at the end of the day, I think that it's not only on us as women to make this space more comfortable, but it's also on the men to make it more comfortable for us as well too.
I think it's great to see the amount of women that are in this industry. I mean, Malika Andrews is one of my favorite hosts. I
Mhm.
mean, you could go down the list. I'm doing a series 32 on 32 for previewing the NFL season. 32 reporters on 32
Nice.
NFL teams. I mean, already I've spoken with Madeline Burke, New York Giants, Sarah
Mhm.
Barshop for the Los Angeles Rams, Brooke Pryor for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it's great to see that there are more women covering sports now. And I think it is great that now they are more welcome than they used to be. And you kind of mentioned how that will also continue to grow as well. And I think it's unbelievable that is the case. One of the things you said earlier really fascinated me, and that's just like you're there on the site to juggle everything. I'm sure there's a lot to juggle because of course, the talent's gonna do their thing. It just feels like a conversation to them. But there's so much it has to go on to really make the show work in a 2 hour frame. How much do you have to work with the other producers, particularly now that you're on site and a lot of them are at a different location? How do you kind of coordinate with the rest of the producers and work together to make sure the show runs smoothly?
Yeah, it's an everyday battle. Well, I won't say battle, it makes it seem like it's a little difficult, but it is an everyday task.
Right.
So we have our morning meetings at 7:30, where whether you're in Bristol or Stephen A, like he was out of LA today, even on Pacific time, like he's tuning into that 7:30 a.m. Eastern time meeting, and I'm here in New York, I'm tuning into that meeting. Our producers in Bristol are tuning into that meeting. So already
Stephen A.
every
Smith is
single
waking up at 4:30 a.m. Pacific time to tune into these meetings.
Yes, yes, he
This
is.
is the grind. Wow.
And this is and like every he'll be in LA all this week. So that's every day. You know?
Right.
So we always tease him because he likes to be in his Miami location or he'll like to be in his LA location. And it's like, okay, like you'll get to travel and you get to be where you want to be, but just know by 7:30 in the morning we need you there. So no matter what time zone you're in, he's always ready to go. So and it's so fascinating. Like the funniest thing is being in a meeting at 7:30 a.m. and you have Mad Dog who is going back and forth with Stephen A about something Dak Prescott said the night before, and it's 7:45 and you have two people screaming at each other, and you're like, and you barely got your first cup of coffee, but you don't need coffee because you have Mad Dog there. So um it's yeah, it's definitely it's so fun, and it's going back to the transition from Seaport to Hudson. Mad Dog's first day at Seaport, his first day at Hudson, his driver dropped him off at Seaport. So and that's something that, okay, people, the producers in Bristol, they're like, oh no, like how do we fix this? But as being the person in New York, I'm like, okay, I need to make sure his driver gets him, up the west coast, the west side drive, and make sure he gets him to this exit, and then we'll figure it out over here.
A new
So
challenge every day you got to uncover, I
a
guess.
new
It's just
challenge every single day, truly. So it it's a lot of communication, a lot of over communication. That's the number one thing I've learned as a producer. You can never over communicate, and you probably will be the most annoying person some talent will talk to. But I think that they understand, like I think they understand like the weight of what producing is, and how there's so many different parts. It's not just about putting up a topic and letting talent go. You have to have your lower thirds. You have to have your nameplates. You have to have supporting video elements and stats, and it's just really a team effort. So I give so much credit to my team, whether they're the audio guys and lighting guys in New York, or whether they're the graphics and researchers and other producers in Bristol. We all do a really good job of communicating with each other from that 7:30 a.m. meeting all the way till 12:30, 1 o'clock when we're doing our post show. We're always in constant communication every single day.
in the first edition of Inside ESPN Productions, I spoke with Christopher Ortega, who's been a production assistant at
Oh,
ESPN, working on
nice.
First Take and stuff like that. Yeah, Christopher is great to speak with. But one of the things he said is just kind of what you mentioned. He was reiterating in our conversation how there's so many tasks, and he said in his role, he feels like his job is pretty much changing every single day. From where you're at, you've been here now for a few years. Is your job usually staying the same, or how much like turnover is it on like a day to day basis?
Oh, I wear so many different hats. I wear so many different hats every day. It can be something different. Also because we just have different guests. So, for example, like I said, today we had Chad Tosinko on the show, and he came to talk about Madden 99 Club and the big reveal. And then later this week we have Triple H and we have Cody Rhodes that's going to be here previewing SummerSlam. So on those days before where I might have to just write scripts and that's all I have to worry about, now I'm getting an extra layer added on where now I'm talent prepping, and I'm also researching. Like, I'm not a huge wrestling fan, but when we have our wrestling guests, I want to make sure that they know that we know everything going on with the
Right.
storylines, and we know who they're going up against, and we know their previous story. We know who's turning heel, and like we need to know all this stuff. So that takes a lot of prep the day before, the morning of. So it does change quite often every day. Some months will have initiatives, so like Black History Month, I'm always at the forefront of that. And that can be anywhere from producing a segment where we have Candace Parker on, or it could be getting promotions for an HBCU spotlight that we're going to have. It definitely changes throughout the day, throughout the week. But I think that's the best part of it, right? Working in sports, you're not always talking about the same exact things, it's always
Right.
changing. And that's just the landscape of sports in general.
So you just mentioned sports is always changing. There's so much to talk about. You schedule. You have this 2 hour time slot. You're having on guests, this and that. breaking news hits. This is something I spoke about with Christopher
Mhm.
Ortega. How do you guys manage that? How chaotic is it behind the scenes when a big breaking news happens? Like when I had Christopher on, it was a little while ago. I think it was when earlier that week, DeAndre Hopkins was traded to Kansas City, and he said that
Mhm.
that was like boom, like that was like crazy. You just had to do so many things. If there's breaking news, what is it like behind the camera?
Whew. I was trying to think of an analogy to it's like when SpongeBob walks through the doors and he's like blowing out all the fire and the smoke, and that's what it basically looks like. That's behind doors. So I'll give you an even better example from DeAndre Hopkins getting traded. I remember being in the control room for 2 days straight when Woody Johnson got fired as the Jets GM, and then right before that, Robert Saleh got fired as the Jets GM. I mean, as the Jets head coach, and those happened. Those that breaking news happened back to back days, and our show starts at 10 a.m. The news dropped at 10:05. So what that looks like for us is now
You're like you
whatever
couldn't have
we
done this an hour ago. You're like, thanks,
you could
guys.
like some kind of heads up. Like we need to talk
Right.
to somebody in the Jets organization because as much as we do appreciate the breaking news and all the eyes that are going to come on, a little bit of a heads up would be nice.
Yeah. Right.
So,
Right.
but no. In all seriousness, that's where we rely on our team the most because you have someone which would usually be myself going inside the rundown and making those changes and saying, okay, we're going to move. We were going to talk about Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson and if they're going to beat Patrick Mahomes finally. We were going to
What
talk
I
about
talk about
that.
in my head every single day, so you may as well. As a diehard Ravens
So
fan, that's all I think about. So
right.
yeah,
Yeah, or like we're talking about Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson. That's going to get pushed back when we have breaking news. So
right.
now everything that we had scheduled in the rundown, whether it's video, whether it's graphics, whether it's scripts, we're now all working as a team. We're calling Chris Ortega and saying, "Hey, we need Aaron Rodgers ISOs right now. We need Robert Sala ISOs right now, so that way when we're ready to talk about it, we have video that can support it. We have someone that's looking at Adam Schefter's Twitter, managing that around the clock, so that
So do
way
you
it's
not get a heads up from like an Adam or Shams when there is breaking news? Like, are you
no.
finding out the same time as everyone else?
As soon as that tweet hits send, that's when we find out,
Okay.
just like everyone
Wow.
else. So yeah, you can imagine the amount of during free agency, the amount of news that Shams was breaking back when we had Woj, the amount of Woj bombs that would drop.
Yep.
We are checking our phone just as much as the average person. Like I may not get a text from my mom or my friends all day, but I'm getting notifications from Adam Schefter and Woj all day.
Right.
So making sure that someone's monitoring that, writing the scripts for that. And then it's the communication aspect of letting Molly know, hey, I know we're only 5 minutes into the conversation, but we're going to need to move this train elsewhere and making sure that she also feels comfortable enough to do that. Because at the end of the day, she's the driver. If the driver doesn't know which exit they're getting off of, if they don't know what their next turn is, then everybody's going to be screwed, right? So being able to communicate with that with her efficiently, where she feels comfortable enough, and then we can actually have a good conversation about what the breaking news is.
So you say you notify Molly. Do like the analysts, such as like obviously like Stephen A. or Mad Dog or anyone else that's on the panel, like Mike Tannenbaum, whoever it is at the time, are they finding out that as well, or is Molly just kind of relaying that to them, kind of at the same time?
They're finding it out as soon as Molly switches the subject.
Oh,
Like
oh
most,
wow. So
we
like
do
they
have,
just gotta go.
yeah. So there was an incident. I can't remember exactly which trade it was over this past summer, but Tim Bontemps was on our show when we had breaking news, and he actually, before we could tell Molly to, hey, this is the breaking news. You can go ahead and let them know, and we'll transition. Tim Bontemps was like, I'm gonna stop you guys right now. This has just happened in the NBA. And for us, we're okay with that because Tim Bontemps is our NBA insider. So he should be taking that opportunity to break news himself. But a lot of the times our analysts and our guests are finding out whenever we're letting them know because they're also not looking at their phones sometimes throughout the show.
I mean, it's very funny that we're talking about this right now because literally this would be a scenario where Adam Schefter just brings out breaking news. Now, it's not anything extreme that you guys want to bring out.
Mhm.
Baker Mayfield kind of restructuring a contract, but it is kind of crazy how
Oh,
you got to just
see?
turn on a dime like that. I find that so fascinating. It's something that I feel like I would enjoy the first time and then maybe be like, all right, let's never do this again at the same time, where it's like, all right, that was fun. Let's not have to deal with that. But I'm sure it is. I mean, I'm sure it's a fun challenge. If you're
It
working in
is fun.
sports, everything I feel like is a fun challenge at that point. Speaking of
Yeah.
challenges, maybe none more extreme for the entire world than COVID-19. I know you were at ESPN. You joined right before, so it was like, "Hi, welcome to ESPN. The world's going to shut down."
Yep.
How did everything change during COVID, and whether it was First Take or just ESPN as a whole? How did they run smoothly?
So that's a great question. And like you said, who would have thought that their first year at ESPN that there would be no sports, right? Like you
Right,
can't whenever people ask me like, oh, so how's it been? And I'm like, I kind of know, but also I don't really know.
right.
So I started 3 months before yeah, everything shut down, sports, the world, all that. However, at that time, I was already a production assistant on First Take, coincidentally. So for First Take, we were because we're not actually covering broadcasts for games, and we're talking about sports news. We had to continue finding news to talk about. And it just because there's no basketball games on, First Take still has to produce shows versus where you have people who produce the games, they're no longer working because there's no sports to produce. However, for us, we still had that challenge of finding different topics, whether it's Micah Parsons talking on a podcast or The Last Dance really saved us. We got to talk about
Last Dance was
Mike.
big. I feel like for the whole country, though, like we
It,
needed something. Like the
yes.
Last Dance was big. I feel like yes.
Yes, exactly. So we were able to talk about, especially when you have Stephen A, who's Team Jordan, like through and through. This was kind of a situation where it really lucked out for us. So it never gave us something where we didn't have something to talk about. And because we are a cultural first show, we're also getting into the nitty gritty of everything that's going on in the country. We're not just ignoring that because I
Right.
think even as a human being, so many people were wrapped into the news and what was going on in everyone's everyday lives. So you never want to ignore that and pretend as if it doesn't exist, but yet you still want to be a comforting space where people can turn off CNN for a few and go and watch ESPN and still get that kind of sense of relief and that they're not getting from watching hard, and it was a really hard time for all of us. So I think that being an essential worker and knowing that people's livelihoods and maybe even just their happiness on a day to day are reliant on the news that we're putting out. I think it was life changing for me. It made me feel really, really important, and it made me value my job so much because I realized like I'm an essential worker. Like I'm
Right.
important. So it was very different. Working on First Take, like I said, we were still on the air 3 times a week, sometimes 5 times a week. I was still going into the office every day. So where a lot of people their work life kind of just stopped. I felt like mine's kind of enhanced a bit because there was so much more
You guys still
responsibility.
went into the studio. You guys didn't do stuff
Mhm.
virtually.
So we had most of our analysts and our guests were virtual. However, as a producer that's cutting highlights and cutting videos and writing scripts, we were still coming into the office.
Wow.
Yeah.
That must have been so. I assume there were a lot of like tests and stuff like that to make sure it was safe. Obviously.
Oh yeah. I mean, we were still spreading out 6 feet apart. Wearing the mask every single day. I had my nice UCF custom mask that I would wear. I had a few First Take custom masks. I would make it stylish,
Mask making business was tremendous in 2020. Yeah.
Exactly.
What a crazy time that was. It's just looking back on it now years later, the fact that we had to separate from people even outside at times. Just what a crazy time it was to be alive. But we made it through, and as did the
Yeah.
sports world. And that's kind of when actually not introduced, but that's when I really started to appreciate First Take, when it was
Mhm.
Molly, Stephen A, and Max Kellerman every single morning, and Kendrick Perkins and Marcus Spears and all these other people joining in. That was kind of my introduction to, like, you want to get into sports media, you want to be like these people. And so it's actually very funny for my bar mitzvah. I was like a sports broadcasting theme, and for
Okay.
my like kind of poster board or whatever, it was a picture. Obviously, used like different pictures to fit it in, but they made it look like it was me with Max Kellerman and Stephen A Smith. And so
Oh,
feel
I
like
love
that was like my
that.
start. That was my my entire COVID life. So it's very funny. At First Take, I feel like a big impact on many people, particularly the issues outside of sports as well, as you mentioned. That's something that I know a lot of people who work there always talk about and how important that is to them. So what a platform it is, and I'm so glad we've been able to speak with you today to learn more about that platform. Look, Tatiyana Smallwood, this has been amazing. I asked this question to everyone I interview, no matter what industry it is. If you had to give one piece of advice to an aspiring producer who wants to be in your shoes one day, what would it be and why?
That is a great question. One thing that I always tell, whether it's mentees that I'm talking to, college students who are looking to get into the business, I always tell them to lean on what makes them one of one. When I walk into a room, I feel like I'm one of one, whether that's the way I look and I know no one else in the room looks like me, lean into that. I'm okay with the uncomfortability of being the one person in the room that may not look like everyone else. I'm comfortable with the fact that I grew up in Florida. I grew up in New York. I have ties to these sports teams all around. I'm going to lean into that. I'm never going to shy away from what makes me me, because at the end of the day, no one can produce and no one thinks about the things that your mind thinks of the way you do. So never be shy to be who you are. Always lean into the fact that you might be the only person in the room that looks like you or that sounds like you, because at the end of the day, we need more people that have different perspectives and different views. And that's not just on a corporate level. I think that's just on a worldly level. That's what makes us better as people. And then continue to push the people who are different in order to help them push along in their career too, because I always want to give back, especially like when I see young girls and they're looking to get into the sport. I always want to give back and make sure that they understand that they're supported. And I think
Right.
that I wouldn't have that same responsibility if there were moments where I felt uncomfortable, right? So my
Sure.
uncomfortability pushed me to make sure that the next person doesn't feel uncomfortable. And I just want to make sure that everyone knows that they're only one person that thinks the way they do, and to continue to give that back forward.
What a message. What an episode. Tatiyana Smallwood, thank you so much for joining me here today on the show. We obviously covered a lot of different topics. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
We're going to wrap it up here in another edition of Inside ESPN Productions here on Chase's Sports News. I am your host, Chase Coburn, alongside Tatiyana Smallwood. We will see you next time right here from Chase's Sports News.